When people talk about global migration into South Africa, the public discussion almost always looks north toward the rest of the African continent. But if we want to be objective about migration pressures the country faces, we have to follow the money, the privilege, and the systemic loopholes that insulate those with a higher exchange rate to the rand. Right now, a silent wave of wealthy migrants is landing directly inside South Africa's most affluent coastal spaces. They are not fleeing war zones and they are not carrying refugee papers. They are carrying blue American passports. Every single week, thousands of remote workers, tech consultants, and corporate creatives from Los Angeles, New York, and Austin are packing their high end MacBooks, leaving the United States, and setting up camp in places like Camps Bay, Greenpoint, and Clifton. On the surface, it looks like harmless tourism or trendy digital nomadism. But if we look past the aesthetic social media vlogs, we see a profound structural story. This is what happens when a crumbling democratic social contract inside a global superpower drives its own citizens to seek an escape hatch, using their immense financial leverage to distort local economies thousands of miles away. Think about the reality of the American system right now. We're not talking about everyday inflation right now, okay? We are looking at a deep systemic failure of the basic social contract. For millions of middle class Americans, the foundational promise that work hard guarantees a stable life has completely collapsed. They are trapped under a monopolistic capitalist model where technology, instead of making human lives easier, has turned into an aggressive engine for tech surveillance, algorithmic workplace management, and predatory data monetization. The cost of merely existing in America has turned into a mathematical nightmare. The cost of corporate healthcare is astronomical. Higher education traps generations under a mountain of debt, and the residential real estate market inside major US cities has been completely cornered by massive institutional investment firms. When you look around your home country and realize that a single medical emergency can bankrupt you and that corporate technology is monitoring your productivity down to the second just to keep your head above water, your sense of civic trust tends to erode. So, when the pandemic normalization of remote work handed these professionals the ultimate corporate freedom, they realized that they could take their high value United States dollars and execute a massive macroeconomic hack. They choose to live in a country where their dollars convert into a luxury lifestyle while completely bypassing the domestic realities of the people who actually live there. But how do they maintain this lifestyle without facing proper regulatory oversight? Well, they exploit highly specific administrative blind spots. Under South Africa's current immigration laws, citizens from the United States are granted an automatic free 90-day tourist visa waiver upon arrival. It is a system designed to encourage holiday spending, but instead of vacationing, these migrants are using it as a permanent residency loophole. As the 90 days draws to a close, they don't apply for formal, rigorous critical skills permits or business visas through the Department of Home Affairs, but instead, they execute the classic cyclical visa run. They take a quick weekend trip across the border to Namibia, Botswana, or a quick flight to a regional hub, grab a new entry stamp, and return to South Africa for another 90 days of tax free living. Isn't that grand? But let's be completely clear about the impact of this behavior. When individuals intentionally exploit these tourism loopholes to live and work indefinitely without formal regularization, they create an incredibly unfair dual tier reality. They're enjoying the infrastructure, the safety, the private healthcare facilities, and the natural beauty of South Africa, but they are completely insulated from the fiscal responsibilities that local citizens cannot escape. Think about the local South African middle class right now. We are talking about families who are squeezed to the absolute limit. They are fighting rising electricity tariffs, paying massive premiums for private medical aid, and struggling to find their children's university education without relying on rare scholarships or hefty student loans. The average South African professional can barely afford to take their own family or friends out for a basic lunch or sit down for a meal in Camps Bay anymore. They are being structurally priced out of their own country by a foreign class that pays zero income tax to SARS because their earnings remain stashed in offshore American accounts. Now, let's look at it exactly how their structural distortion plays out on the ground in Cape Town's most prized coastal enclaves. When you walk through Greenpoint, Sea Point, or Camps Bay, you aren't just looking at beautiful real estate. You're looking at a hyper-gentrified commercial battlefield because these American migrants possess immense dollar-backed purchasing power. They have completely warped the local property market. Short term holiday rentals via digital platforms have incentivized property owners to evict long term South African tenants in favor of foreign digital nomads who can pay double or triple the local rental rate in hard currency. Local small businesses like the community coffee shops, the homegrown boutiques, or the neighborhood bakeries are being systematically displaced because commercial landlords are jacking up rents to match the deep pockets of international franchises and high end lifestyle brands catered exclusively to expats. But this is not some accidental shift in market dynamics. This is an organized political process. If you want to see true institutional rot, look at how the local political machinery facilitates this displacement. In the Western Cape, the DA led City of Cape Town actively champions a policy of releasing and commercializing municipal land, driving major high profile auctions like the recent sale of over 50 municipal properties, including the iconic Good Hope Center. The Good Hope Center, guys, to unlock private sector investment. While opposition parties like Action SA and the ACDP fiercely challenged this model, accusing the DA of neglecting affordable social housing and auctioning off public heritage to the highest global bidder, the status quo remains heavily skewed toward financial optimization. This aggressive commercialization of public assets leaves strategic urban spaces open to the highest bidder rather than protecting them for inclusive local development. Instead of protecting these strategic coastal zones for affordable, inclusive spatial integration so that ordinary South Africans can live closer to economic opportunities, these parties oversee a system that treats prime public assets like luxury commodities on a global auction block. They grease the wheels for international development consortiums, allowing zoning laws to be quietly bent and business licenses to be fast tracked for elite commercial operations. Let us see now how the system gets corrupted on a daily basis. Consider the ongoing concerns around residential properties in part of the Atlantic seaboard being used for commercial purposes outside their intended zoning or without full regulatory compliance. Reports of short term rentals, event venues, commercial shoots, and other business activities operating from residential properties have raised questions about enforcement, licensing, taxation, and land use compliance. Critics argue that where commercial activity occurs without proper registration or oversight, it can create unfair competition. It reduces transparency and places additional pressure on local housing and neighborhood infrastructure. That makes sense, right? When a prominent local community forum flags these blatant zoning violations to municipal inspectors, the enforcement mechanisms tend to mysteriously stall. Why? Because the syndicates running these boutique networks use their deep pockets to pay off compromised municipal officials and private security networks to look the other way. When a local municipality or a planning committee allows an elite, unlicensed foreign facing business to operate in plain sight while aggressively clamping down on a local informal street trader down the road, they are doing something deeply sinister. They are actively dismantling the economic sovereignty of their own people. They are validating an elite, lawless shadow economy that starves the local municipality of tax revenue while turning public neighborhoods into private playgrounds for global passport arbitrage. To truly understand why the civic exit is happening, we have to contrast the massive architectural differences in how these two nations handle governance. The United States and South Africa represent two completely opposite philosophies of democratic design. The American system is built on a highly litigious, deeply polarized, and fundamentally flawed majoritarian model. Power is intensely concentrated within an archaic federal architecture where corporate campaign financing and systemic lobbying have essentially legalized institutional corruption. Because the US system relies on an incredibly adversarial legal framework, the path to justice is locked behind a massive paywall. Regular people are completely priced out of defending their basic rights because corporate giants can tie up legal proceedings in court for decades. More importantly, the US constitutional model focuses almost exclusively on negative liberties like protecting individuals from state interference while completely ignoring the positive social and economic rights required to sustain human dignity. The result is a hyper individualistic, highly polarized society where institutional trust is completely dead and the political elite are permanently deadlocked. Now, contrast that against South Africa's constitutional system. South Africa operates on a model of absolute constitutional supremacy. Here, the Constitution is not just a defensive shield, it is an active, aggressive legal weapon designed to transform society. Most critically, the South African Constitution explicitly prioritizes socioeconomic rights directly on paper. It guarantees the right to housing, to healthcare, to education, and a clean environment. Another thing to understand is that the system is anchored in proportional representation, which structurally forces political parties to negotiate, build coalitions, and prevent the kind of total majoritarian polarization that paralyzes Washington today. While the ground execution of these rights remains an ongoing battle that South Africans are fighting to figure out day by day, the foundational architecture provides regular citizens, social movements, and independent legal watchdogs with the direct constitutional standing to sue the state and force systemic policy shifts. In America, the legal system protects the wealth of the corporation. In South Africa, the legal system is designed to protect the inherent dignity of the human being. So, what do we do about this? If you are an American citizen listening to this from a trendy cafe in Cape Town, You cannot simply use your passport as a permanent escape hatch from the systemic failures of your home country. Running away from your democracy because your institutions are gridlocked is a betrayal of your civic duty. With the critical midterm elections taking place this year, you have to realize something fundamental. The true power to repair America does not belong to the corporate lobbyists in Washington. It belongs entirely to you, the citizen, standing up and reclaiming the structural levers of your own democracy. To halt this global civic exit and stop pricing out local communities abroad, American citizens must demand localized structural, electoral, and institutional repairs. In case you are stumped because your American education system has completely failed you, here are some strategies to get you started. Ahead of these midterms, citizens must fiercely organize at the state level to ban partisan gerrymandering through the mandatory implementation of independent, nonpartisan citizen redistricting commissions. When politicians are legally barred from handpicking their own voters to create hyperpolarized safe seats, they will feel forced to abandon extremist rhetoric and actually govern from the center. You must leverage your vote to pass state level ranked choice voting systems that break the monopolistic stranglehold of the two party duopoly, opening the door for genuine systemic accountability. The financial corruption of the American system must be legally choked off from the bottom up. While federal courts remain paralyzed by corporate legal precedents, citizens must aggressively push for state level clean election legislations that establish robust, publicly funded campaign systems and place strict, unyielding caps on PAC donations. I would like to believe that you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because when you strip corporate dollars out of local and state elections, you force representatives to become directly dependent on the support of actual human constituents rather than corporate boardroom directors or others who may be in the mix. Citizens must demand legislative reforms that mandate regular, legally binding citizen assemblies at the municipal and state levels to directly oversee local public spending and housing regulations. Furthermore, you must pressure your representatives to pass sweeping transparency acts that force every federal agency to dismantle the opaque walls of administrative law, making corporate lobbying schedules and dark money contributions instantly viewable on open access public registries. When the public can see exactly which corporate interests are writing the text of their bills, the era of unchecked insider trading and policy manipulation comes to a dead stop. Building a functional democracy takes immense, unyielding work. It requires moving past mere online frustration and directly engaging in the cold, hard mechanics of institutional reform. You must demand that your laws protect your local property markets, that your politicians answer to your votes instead of corporate cash, and that your economy serves the people who live within its borders, not people who can easily flee to Argentina. Stop running from systemic failures and start dismantling them. Life won't be easier in South Africa. Locals are fixing their own massive problems. Trust me, you do not want to be caught in the crossfire. What is better if America repairs its broken social contract, ensuring that migration is an adventurous choice, not a privileged escape? Fix your foundation today. Doesn't matter what Donald Trump says. I know that you can do it. Even take a page out of Candace Owens' book if you're not sure how to build up the courage.